going to be discussing specifically lesson planning this afternoon. So first, the agenda. You will see that we have two objectives with this training. The first one is the teachers will be able to understand the requirements of lesson planning, specifically for Vince School. And teachers will be able to write a lesson planner in any types of lesson of the ESL program. We will be training on this specific topic from 1:30 to 2:05. So we might go a bit over since we started a bit later. And then we will have, again, Q&A, quiz, and a short break. After that, this afternoon, we'll resume our last training at 3 p.m. and it will go up to 4:30 p.m. It's early literacy, and then we'll have QA and quiz, and we'll be done for the day. I will need to take your attendance at that point. So from now, please, you can turn off your camera, okay? And please have your mic off. I will be doing the same. Thank you, everyone. Perfect. Module 3, lesson planner. So you already had a look at the lesson planner template because you have had access to it in your previous training, and you already duplicated it, so you will be able to plan in teams. We are going to look at what we write in the different little frame of the lesson planner and what is the expectation when it comes to lesson planning in kindergarten. So the model goals, as I already said, is you will be able to understand the requirements of lesson planning by the end of this model, and you will be able to write a lesson planner in any types of lesson the ESL program. The content of this training is the first point, curriculum mapping step. We'll have another look at that to make sure we understand the process, and specifically, what are the different sections of the lesson planners you will have to write, and also have a short practice in teams or individually before our Q&A and quiz. So the curriculum mapping steps, we already discussed that this morning. The program, any curriculum actually, defines a mission and a vision statement to give us directions on what we want to achieve by the end of the program. From the vision statements, we are writing specific aims in different areas of the program. In our case, it's specifically designed for language. So we are looking at effective communication and confident communication. We are looking also at being able to discuss diversity, accept diversity, being able to be a good communicator, and also someone who is curious and wishes to improve their skills. Those aims are then going to be defined and divided into different strands and sub-strands. From those strands and sub-strands, we develop learning standards. Those are the goals of the program, what you will achieve at each level. And then we develop and create a unit calendar and then unit outcomes. That is going to guide our content knowledge and also our skills for each unit, and then later on for each lesson. And from there, we will develop different unit planners. Again, for each level, they are going to be different. So for example, this year, unit calendar looks like this. Remember that the unit calendar is going to be different for each level. So here we have our key dates. We are starting June 15th and we are ending the year May 31st. And the key dates are events or celebrations or holidays that we have during the school year. And then you have your 6 levels. So from KT to pre-stage 2, remember pre-stage 2 is for Alvin Advanced, our 5 to 6 years old. I will give you access to the unit calendar. I will copy the link here. Okay, so you can have a look at it later. Sorry. But you can see that some of the topics are going to be similar from one level to another. The first topic is common for all the levels, the welcome unit. And then some topics like All About Me, for example, are also going to be repeated following the principle of spiral learning. But mostly you are going to see that Kitty and Nemo follow exactly the same unit calendar, where Bambi and stage 1 are often going to match and be developed around the same principle, and pre-stage 1 to stage 1 and then stage 1 to pre-stage 2. So a lot of the vocabulary is going to be presented in the earlier stage and revisited in the other stages. The idea is for the learners to be able to master this vocabulary, and beyond that, to be able to use this vocabulary, match it to new meaning as well, use it in different contexts, and add to that vocabulary. So in the same category, for example, animals, we are going to extend their vocabulary, starting maybe with cats and dogs in Kitty and Nemo, and then we are going to expand it where they will learn different categories. For example, they are pets, but they are also farm animals, and they are also wild animals. And then the vocabulary is expanding, and obviously they can categorize, they can sort into different families, all of the vocabularies that they are learning. So you could also see that we have a lot of review time. So typically after 3 units in Kitty and Nemo, we are doing some review. The review is not necessarily guided because it really depends on each class needs. So for example, in some classes and for some kids, they will need to review some objectives and some content, and also revise some skills or re-practice some skills. But in other classes, it will be a different content, so different skills that the kids will need to practice again. So we're not going to dictate what you should review. You will be the one to decide that. The activities can be redone in different ways and target different content knowledge, or even some of the activities that when the kids really enjoy can be redone during the review time. So that's for our Kitty to pre-stage 2, and you see here it's 4 units, then there is a review, 3 units, and there is a review. Most of the time is 2 units, and then there is a review. But there is, from pre-stage 1, an assessment as well. It's a play-based assessment most of the time. It's an interview 101 for the learners who are not really interested in playing in groups. You will be doing that for only pre-stage 1, stage 1, and stage 2 over the course of 2 weeks. So you can do your review, then your assessment. And the idea here is to really have a summative data where you know where the students are at some point in their learning. And that is happening end of November, because you will have to issue your reports for term 1. Typically mid-December is the expected date for expat teachers and Vietnamese English teachers. And then the parent conferences will take place the 3rd week of December. That's for term 1. Similar dates for term 2, you will find that the review and assessment is conducted in term 2 a month before you have to send your report for term 2, and then a week before your parent conferences. So important dates to remember, obviously, because you're working towards being able to collect all the data on the student progress, to benchmark on the reports, and to be able to also write short comments on the student progress, whether it's on their academic skills or their behavior. So the unit calendar will be accessible to you, and we will send you the whole program before you start. But the first unit was already shared with all of your EKTs and your principals, so you will be able to start planning after this training. We'll actually start doing some planning during this training. Hopefully that will be helpful. pet holiday. That's all I wanted to show you here for this unit calendar. And it is then taking me to the next step of curriculum mapping, which is designing what we call the unit planner. So unit planning helps us first prioritize what we teach and recognize areas we might have neglected. It also helps students understand how activities and concepts are going to connect within a unit. And you will see that sometimes we just revisit in different units the same vocabulary. When we are doing our family unit, for example, we are learning about connections between families. We're learning to describe our family and how families are different. We are learning also to talk about our homes and describe our homes and how we live in different homes, and there are different expectations for different families. And then when we are learning about the unit Spring Festival, we are revisiting the family vocabulary. And we are doing so because we want the learners to be able to use the same vocabulary and sentence structure connected to that topic family, but now talking about family traditions, family customs during Spring Festival. What are they doing as a family that is unique? What are they doing as a family that is similar to others, etc.? That's how we are revisiting the vocabulary in different contexts to help the learners understand that any vocabulary can be used in different contexts. Now, the next step is often in unit planning to use textbook, literature, and reading as resources. So you will see that there are textbooks in stage 1 and pre-stage 2 that we are referring to that you can use as resources. If you want to add more activities, use the worksheets, etc., you definitely can, and you will see that the content knowledge and the skills are linked to those textbooks. But again, it's just a resources. The textbook is not a curriculum. The curriculum already has been mapped, and there is an expectation to achieve the goal of the curriculums and not necessarily the unit outcomes of the textbook. The last point is the unit planning is often allowing us to focus on what matters the most. Because content knowledge and skills is often something that we are focusing on, especially vocabulary in language learning, in language classes. We want the learners to have a lot of vocabulary. We want the learners to be able to speak in full sentences, but we are often overlooking the skills. It is quite important to understand that what we are trying to achieve are the learning standards in the 5 strands of the program, of the curriculum. There are different skills that the learners will need to master by the end of the program. The vocabulary, they have a lifetime to be able to learn and acquire, but the skills and what we are trying to achieve in terms of behavior are things that are going to be practiced at a point of time and then scaffolded for the next level. So there is not always time to revisit those. So they need to be acquired at the level they have been, assigned to. So for example, if we want learners to be able to sound all phonemes presented in the phonics program, there is an expectation that this can happen in kindergarten level, because the primary teacher is going to build on that. There is a reality, of course, in the classroom, and some learners will not be able to process it, but this is still the expectation. This is the goal towards which you are working, even if there are some exceptions. There is also why we are applying differentiation in the classroom, obviously, and primary teachers will have to do the same, because there are always some learners that will not be able to master all of the content, and the learners are mastering different content as well. For our stages, what we have done is first, in stage 1, to really focus on what is the purpose of the unit and the major takeaway of the unit. And I hope that the unit description is really helping you to see that and giving you direction. In stage 2, we look at assessments. What performances or products will reveal the students' understanding in this unit? So that's why there is some advice and some notes on what you should be assessing in the unit planner. And then in stage 3, we're looking at the learning plan. So specifically what you will be designing. What are the activities, the experiences, and the lessons that will help achieve the desired results of the unit planner? Looking at, again, the unit description and the different unit outcomes that have been listed out for you. So this is an example of unit planner. I gave you access to the welcome unit. So this is a copy of it, and the next unit is also presented my friends and me. So this unit planner is designed where you have all the information related to the units in one spreadsheet. So for example, here, for any unit, you start with a unit description. It gives you direction. What is the summary of the unit, and what are the expected results by the end of the unit? Then we're looking at the detailed vocabulary and grammar of the unit, the grammar points, and then the standards and the outcomes. We're focusing more obviously on the outcomes. So sometimes going back to read the standard helps you understand the outcomes better. Then we're looking at the lesson design. So stage 3, what are the different lesson content knowledge, and how many lesson content knowledge can you see here? For example, in the first unit, we have 6. And then the lesson outcomes. The lesson outcomes for each lesson. And a lesson doesn't mean one period. A lesson can be conducted over several periods. So for example, for the first lesson here, you can see in the lesson description, which is again a summary of what is expected to happen in those lessons and what is your goal in these lessons, is the duration. You have 5 periods to design 5 lessons here, okay? And then after that, we give you access to a list of activities that are suggested to achieve the unit outcomes and the lesson outcomes that have been listed out. From there, you will have to write your own learning objectives and pick activities that fit your learning objectives. Sometimes it will require a bit of, adapting the learning objective or the activity if the learner of your student, the level of your students is not exactly there. Our lesson planners, hopefully, will help you really focus on what you want to achieve over a lesson. It's a bit of an exercise. For some of us, it's quite daunting. So hopefully what will happen is on campus, when you get to know everyone, the whole teaching staff, you will be able to collaborate on your lesson plans. You won't have, I hope, to write your lesson plans by yourself. Some teachers prefer it, and that's perfectly fine, but it is indeed a lot of work. So I do hope that part of the lesson plans will be created collaboratively. And then after that, it is up to you to make it fit your classroom. That's where differentiation, happens. Very often you will see we plan collaboratively, we have the same goals, though things that are going to work and things that are not going to work in your classroom, and where you need to differentiate part of the content so it will meet the needs of your students. So first, the lesson planner is going to remind us of our objectives. You can see here after you typed in your name, your class name, the week, and the lesson title, you will have to list out your objectives, okay? In step 1, what are my objectives? In step 2 or in step 3, we'll discuss what the different steps are. And then you will organize what we call steps in the lesson. So depending on the type of lesson, it might start with a review, okay? So for example, when you are doing phonics lesson, often after the first unit or the first phonics lesson, you're starting with a review. You're always starting with a review. So if in your first intro lesson, you introduce the sound s, a, in your second lesson, you are going to review the sound s and a. And then you will be introducing a new sound, which is going to be t. So it is your first step, reviewing content, building on the prior knowledge that they already acquire. Then in your second step, you are introducing the new sound. In your third step, you are going to help learners identify those sounds in a game, for example, a swapping game, where the learners will have to swap sounds, or for example, in a musical chair game, where the learners are going to go around the room. And then when the music stops, they will have to sit on the chairs, for example, that have the sound. Or you will go into blending if you are working with higher level, and the learners will have to blend those sounds to make new words. And the step 4 is often an activity that is going to enforce what was learned, assess what was learned, or even doing, a follow-up activity. For example, if you want a connection with home, you will send some homework. You would just explain what the worksheet is, and they will have to take it home. So that will be your last step. All of those steps are going to be here, specified in your lesson planner. And then your success criteria, which are your lesson outcomes, very often they match, except if you've written objectives that are very different. So they will have to be listed out in connection with the objectives. Then in the description, we're talking activities mostly. You will write the title of the activity, the time you are intending to spend on that step in the activity, and then the procedure, what you will be doing. And then last, differentiation and assessment for learning in the different steps. So differentiation won't be noted in every single lesson that you are going to do. Some lessons you will have differentiation in content or in materials or even in the objective, and should be noted here. But not all steps will require differentiation. And then resources, which I often find is optional, because you won't necessarily have a link of a soft copy to put here, or even need to really note what the resources are going to be before a lesson. If you have your own classroom, it's quite easy for you to collect resources that you need. But it could be in the seating arrangement, for example. If you're expecting teachers to collaborate, for example, from the expat teacher to the Vietnamese English teacher, it might be easier to specify how you want the learners to be seated in the classroom, so your helper or your co-teacher can help you make sure that the children are seated a certain way for each step of the lesson. And then last, plans for different instructions when required. There is a reflection part in our lesson plans. We find that it's not necessarily done after each lesson, but it can help you be more guided for the following lesson or the following unit. So a good check for you is to, you have some question listed or some components listed of what makes a good lesson. You can check on those to reflect whether or not your lesson is well planned and well thought. For example, do you think your learning objectives are clear? Is it an engaging learning environment for that lesson? Did you apply Bloom taxonomy? Do you have good interaction with your students? For the activities that you plan, do you think it is going to be engaging and it is going to support talking, student talking, etc.? Are the activities going to be student-led mostly? What kind of comments are you going to deliver to the students? What kind of feedback do you expect to deliver to the students? And was it an appropriate delivery? Do you think it went well? Here in the lesson, learn, and evaluation, it is possible for you sometimes to just note in your summary evaluation the things you think went well and the thing that you should improve. Reflecting during lesson planning and after a lesson has been implemented is really helpful if you keep a teaching journal even more, because it helps you not just be a better teacher or adapt to really the needs of your students, but also to be a better planner, which is really important for teachers. Because if you want to be adaptive in the classroom environment, often it's because you have reflected and thought of the things that you will be doing differently if you were confronted to that situation again. I always found that it was quite important to reflect, not on a daily basis, but quite often on what we have done, what went well, what didn't work well, and try to identify why it didn't work well. I want us to give ourselves a bit of practice here. The lesson planner is really not a difficult design. I'm sure that all of you have had an opportunity to work with similar lesson planners. Maybe not the reflective part as much, but I will say some format of lesson plan that was similar to this. So all of you have created a tab in our lesson planner practice file already. So what we are going to try to do here is go back to the link to find the content of welcome units. I had to lock it because I noticed that there were some changes made, just a mistake, but I do not want any of the content to be deleted or modified. So I just locked that, that file. And then you already copy your weekly lesson plan into a new tab. You entered your team's name. And now what I will want you to start doing is writing your lesson plan using that unit. So here, okay. I'm going to resend the link in case you didn't save it. Okay. So we are going to plan for one lesson and one lesson only, okay? So remember when we are looking at here, the lesson content knowledge, they are divided into 6 here. Each lesson content knowledge is then divided into different periods. For example, the first one, which is introducing themselves and other learners and sharing personal information, should be implemented, this content implemented and mastered over 5 periods. That's 5 lesson planners, okay? Today, I want you to write only one lesson planner. So to give you an example, I should have mine. Let me just make sure I have still my planner. We have a lot of teachers on this call. Okay. Imperial. Part 3. Sorry. Okay. So for example, this is our Gardenia team. Okay. And if I look at this unit, welcome, and specifically the first lesson, content knowledge, I'm going to target just learners being able to introduce themselves and learners asking a friend or repeat his or her name only, not just how old she is or how they feel. No, I will only focusing on specific vocabulary, which is hello, what's your name? My name is, I'm Dao, you know, and then asking a friend, what's your name? My name is, and they should be able to answer the question, what's his name, and repeat the information, which is his name is. So that's the first content that I will focus on. Okay, so the lesson outcome is learners can introduce themselves, learners can ask a friend and repeat her name. That's it in my first period. And the content knowledge is, hello, what's your name? My name is, okay? So that is going to be my focus. And that's what I'm going to design that first period around. You can pick anything. You can pick any lesson content knowledge. You can pick any lesson outcomes that you want. You do not have to stick to that, obviously. But remember that all the content is not to be taught over the course of one period. Most of this content is to be divided into several periods. For example, the second content knowledge on school supplies is to be taught over 7 periods, okay? The third one over 4 periods, fourth one, direction, stand up, sit down, etc., over 4 periods. Then the fifth one, identifying and sequencing a story, should be over the course of 3 periods. And the last one, which is the 6th one, predicting the ending of a story, over 2 periods, okay? So again, quite important for you to be aware that these content will not be achieved over one period or one lesson, but rather over a number of periods, depending on the content knowledge you decide on. So please, you can start now. I am going to give you, it is what, 2:10 now? Yes, 2:10. For this practice, I am going to give you until, let's say, 2:25 before we have a short Q&A, okay? You have 15 minutes starting now to start writing your lesson plan. You do not have to finish. You have to give it your best. We will go back to it a few times over the next day and a half anyway. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But you can already get started. And again, I put a clock on it. 2:25, everyone will stop and we'll have a short Q&A before our quiz. And we'll resume our planning tomorrow.